ANDIZI, which means I will not come down. A stubborn focus on building a great life. Written and read by Beauty Kotela. Chapter 11. What will people say? Some people have no problem of laziness, excuses, procrastination, even of the external sun ballads, but their worst fear is other people. It is called people centeredness. There's a difference between considering people and being centered on people. Being considerate of people speaks to the sensitivity towards other people. It speaks to the consciousness of the fact that sometimes your actions can affect other people just as their actions can affect you. Being centered on people, however, is when people become the cause, the big reason for you doing or not doing something. This refers to an unhealthy reliance or fear of how people will perceive you and thus ruining your life depending on their actions or reactions. This call down, if left unchecked, can thwart your building project significantly. From my observations, there are three ways by which people call us down, the so called people. And at times, they do not even know that they are calling us down. You see, the people I'm talking about now are not just the physical people that call us from the outside, it is the so called people that are speaking inside of you. Here we are talking not just about the physical sunballad who is standing down there verbally hurling insults at you. We are talking about the sunballad inside. This one is invisible yet powerful. The first way that people call us down is comparison. While you are busy building your own project, your own wall, pursuing your holy discomfort, pursuing your mission, you start looking around at other people and start comparing your project to other people's projects and you start undermining your project. Here is a problem. The minute you stop focusing on your project and focus on other people, you stop building. You see, if while you are driving a car, you take your eyes away from the road long enough to look somewhere else, sooner or later you will find yourself driving in the direction of your eyes and you are likely to cause an accident or a collision. Paddle your own boat, my friend. Otherwise, while you are busy focusing on other people's boats, yours is losing direction. Even worse, your boat starts to sink because while you are physically on it, you are not in it. You are in someone else's boat at the risk of your own. I am not saying that you may not look or take a glance at other people to see how they are doing things and pick up some lessons that you can implement in your own project. As long as your focus is on your project, you can take a glance at others for ideas, for inspiration, but not to compare yourself to them. There are a number of problems with comparison. The first is that you lose concentration. You get distracted because you are now looking at others instead of what you are busy building. The second and the worst is that you start to build resentment or you build a false sense of security. Let me start with the false sense of security. When you compare yourself with others, especially with people who are doing poorer than what you are doing or people who are doing worse than you, then you start believing that you are better than other people while you are actually punching well below your weight. God has called you to operate at a higher level, but you are comparing yourself with people that are operating at a lower level. So you operate at a much lower level of performance and you are comfortable with operating there because as long as you stay above the people, you are okay. The problem with that mentality is that you are punching below where God has called you. God has called you higher, you are operating lower. And this is not just about low versus high or below versus above. It is about recognizing that God has capacitated you to operate at a higher level and in looking around at what people are doing and in comparing yourself with those operating at a lower level, you are in the end underperforming at your building project. But you are secure because you are better. Danger. Further, the standards of the world keep dropping. So, if you get comfortable as long as you are above the world, one day you will find yourself in a position lower than that of the world, but you will still be above the world and comfortable. Let me use numbers to illustrate. If, for example, you started operating at a standard of 65% and you compared yourself with the world at, say, 50%, you will be comfortable because you are 15% better than the world. But the danger of the world as a point of reference is that the direction is downwards. So from 50%, the world goes down to say 40%. And for you, the goal is better than the world. So you lose your grip, you work less. You then drop from your original standard down to say 55%. But because your point of reference is an underperforming world, you remain comfortable. You may even be saying to yourself, I'm doing better than others, not knowing that you are doing worse than yourself. And so the fall continues until, if you are not paying attention, the world is now at 25% and you are now, for example, at 35%, a position even lower than where the world itself was. And you would still be comfortable because you remain better. You are dying, you are regressing, you are deteriorating, and you are still comfortable because you have chosen a negative point of reference. Open your eyes, my friend. The enemy seeks to ground you. The second problem is comparison upwards. This one, if you are not conscious, tends to build resentment. Haven't you ever looked at people who are doing better than you are, and a little negative, ugly feeling comes up in your spirit, and you get tempted to criticize? You start nitpicking, finding fault in them as you are answering to the resentment that is inside you. Saul wanted to kill David from jealousy that started within him, and with him comparing himself to David. The people also did not help the situation when they said Saul killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. When you compare, either way, you are taking away your peace. Now, in the light of the illustration and numbers used in the negative comparison, if you are secure in your person, you can compare yourself upwards, for example, with a role model. And if you are committed to the process and you keep striving to improve your game, you would find yourself in the position or even higher than the one where your role model was. The second way people call us down is by the things they say. Here we are talking about the external sanbalat. It is unbelievable, but it's true. Some people will look you in the eye or send you a message or call you and say the most hurtful things. Have you ever heard someone say to you, you will never amount to anything? In my language, it sounds even more dramatic and it says, awusozubento. And when these people are close to us, our family members, our circle of friends, our teachers, our colleagues or managers, the impact of those words can be deep and cutting. The problem with these words, especially when said to young people, is that it plants poison in the material that they are building with. Some of us, even as we work hard, we are trying to mute or to answer to a voice from our upbringing. And when you make a mistake, you're like, oh, maybe so and so was right. Who am I to think that I could pull something like this off? Recognize these voices as the voice of the enemy. It is a call down. Do not stop. Sometimes it happens in the workplace. There are those people who would never take the opportunity to compliment you when you do well. But the minute you make one mistake, they speak the loudest. They will tell anyone who will listen, did you see how badly she messed up? They will go around magnifying your mistakes and they always minimize your achievements. These are external sunballads. The aim is to thwart your professional building project. They make it difficult for you to grow because they make it difficult for you to even fail and learn because you simply cannot bear to fail in front of them. Some advice: use those people. You know, when someone comes to me and says, who do you think you are to think you can carry on this project? Depending, of course, on the importance of the project, I keep quiet. I then roll up my sleeves, not centered on them, but with them in mind. I say to myself, I am God's daughter. God said I can do this. Between me and God, we will do this. And I often excel in such situations. You see, although it is never necessary or nice, a little opposition can be good for you. I do not know if you have ever heard of the story of the codfish and the catfish. In some countries, the codfish is a delicacy famous for its taste. But the problem started when they wanted to sell it to other states and other countries. They first started freezing it and transporting it, but they realized that it would lose the flavor but that it was famous for. Then the next plan was to transport it alive in a fish tank to be processed at the destination. This too did not work. The loss of flavor would still take place. Someone devised a plan to have the codfish transported alive, but this time to include its natural enemy, the catfish. That solved the problem. The flavor remained. You see, the whole time while being transported, the codfish was running around defending itself from the catfish, and it was this struggle that kept its flavor. That is what I mean when I say instead of allowing your project to be thwarted by the people, use them as your natural enemy. Use the opposition and the intimidation and the undermining as a bench press against which you exercise your professional development muscles, such that you come out the other end with more flavor. In other words, even better than you were before they started calling you down. When you do that, you give the enemy a huge headache and your building project thrives. Sometimes you need the sharks to chase you around because the more they chase you around, the sharper you get and the more you polish up on your performance. This is because you know there is someone who will criticize you. As a speaker, I have been and I'm still being developed and helped by those in my life who believe in, love, and support me. But some of my growth came from those who would challenge me because whenever I would get a speaking or teaching appointment, I would sometimes receive some opposition or contradictions. This happened at the same time I met my husband and was preparing to get married. I would go home and let him know of my fear of the criticism. He told me to prepare, over prepare, and he bought me a resource Bible so I would doubly prepare for the lesson. Questions would come and I had answers. Some of you are bosses at work. You are an executive somewhere. You are leading people, but you have this one person or this group of people whom you know will be opposing you. Instead of going around sad, hateful, and thinking of ways to get rid of them, use their opposition as a chisel to make you better as well as excellently prepared. I am by no means promoting that we unreasonably put up with abuse of any form, but I'm hinting at Romans 8:28 that all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. God will keep a thorn in your flesh because the thorn keeps you sharp. The thorn keeps you uncomfortable. Therefore, not complacent. The thorn keeps you praying. The thorn keeps you working. The thorn keeps you serving. It does not allow you to rest on your laurels. If there were no enemies, we would all probably be dead from boredom. So sometimes sunblood is necessary to keep you growing. The third and the last way that people call us is in what we think people will say. So they didn't say it. We have no evidence that they said it. But there is something inside of you that thinks they think this way about you. So you don't respond to what they think because you don't know what they think, but you respond to what you think they think. That is madness. But all of us have found ourselves there. How many of you walk into an event in a hall, church hall or school hall, and the only open seats are available up front? How many of you would walk up there in full confidence and go and take the seats at the front? Most of us simply don't. We would rather stand at the back until the event is finished. And in most cases, our only reason is not that we don't want to sit down, but we are afraid of what people are going to think when they see us walking down the aisle to take the seat at the front. Here's the issue. What if they are not even thinking about you? There you go, punishing yourself. There are some among us who have business ideas, the best ideas. Some people would see a promotion at work and would not put up their hand for it. You know you are worth more, but you don't have the courage to ask for a raise. You ask yourself, what is my boss going to think? Then you turn around and answer that question from your boss. Then they will think that I'm ungrateful, too ambitious, or restless, or disloyal, etc. And because you don't want them to think that of you, you don't ask. All this based on a conversation which you had between yourself and the people in your head, not the actual people. And often the day you garner up enough courage and go, and they say yes, you regret not having gone earlier. There you were busy responding to what you thought would be their response. Now, who do you blame in this regard when you yourself have turned a sunblood on you at the instigation of the enemy? So stay alert lest the enemy captures your thoughts and uses them against you. Here's my advice to that internal meeting. Answer the questions that keep coming up in your mind, but answer them both ways, not just in the way that further perpetuates your fear. In other words, to the question about asking your boss for a raise, there are two possible answers, yes and no. Many, however, would automatically think no and then walk away. But what if the boss says yes? Some of us get stopped by what if questions that come up in our minds and how we respond to what we think people think. Answer the question. Let's say I were able to read people's minds and I was indeed able to see their thoughts and know what they are saying about me. So, what if they think that I'm ugly? What if they think badly of me? The answer is I would get hurt. Then what? I would cry. Thereafter, I would survive. I won't die, so I can proceed despite what people say about me. So answer the question. What happens when they say no to my request? I'm going to be sad. What happens when I'm sad? I'm going to cry. And after that, will I die? No. And then proceed. The tool of people is also very useful in the enemy's toolbox as he not only brings physical people, he can also co opt us and get us to cooperate with him in the thwarting of our own building projects. Refuse. Let me close this chapter by sharing the parable of the donkey in a pit. One day, a donkey fell into a pit. The animal cried and whined for hours while his owner tried to figure out what to do. Finally, the farmer decided that since the animal was old and the pit needed to be covered up anyway, he would just bury the old donkey right there. He got a shovel, called some of his friends and neighbors, and they started filling the pit with dirt, burying the donkey. The donkey kept wailing at the idea of being buried alive until it realized something. He realized that due to the smooth texture of his skin, when the dirt falls on his body, he is able to shake it off and the dirt falls in the pit. He would then step on top of the dirt. And so the people kept shoving in the dirt. The donkey stopped wailing. They would shove the dirt. He would wiggle, shake it off, and step up. And before they knew it, he could jump out of the pit, stepping onto the very dirt that was meant to bury him. Many times we will not be able to stop Sanballat from throwing the dirt, but you can wiggle a bit, shake it off, and step onto it and keep building.